Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Commander Natasha Burney. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Charles Edward Doodson. Charles Doodson was born in Manly on the 10th of August, 1885, the eldest son of Edward and Matilda Doodson. Around the time of his 15th birthday, Charles got into trouble for stealing a horse with a girl named Louisa McNeil. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 2 months' hard labour in Armidale Jail. On his release, he sought a life on the sea and spent nearly a decade as a member of the Royal Australian Naval Reserve. He worked for the Port Jackson and Manly Steamship Company, and in 1914 obtained his certificates as Master of a Harbour and River Steamer. In 1910, he married Marion Kirk in Sydney. War broke out in August 1914, and almost immediately, Australia sought to seize German territories in New Guinea. The Australian Naval and Military Expeditionary Force was hastily assembled, with 500 naval reservists among its number, including Charles Doodson. The Expeditionary Force was successful in capturing German radio stations in New Guinea and occupied the German territory. Charles Doodson spent several months in Rebelle before returning to Australia. Charles Doodson enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in January 1916. By this time, 2 of his brothers, Walter and Fred, had served on Gallipoli. Fred had died of wounds sustained at the landing in April 1915, and Walter had been wounded at Lone Pine in August and sent home an invalid. Charles underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas once again in May 1916, this time with the 7th Field Artillery Brigade. Gunner Doodson was first sent to England, where he continued training on Salisbury Plain. In September 1916, he was transferred to the 3rd Light Trench Mortar Battery, which would place him closer to the front line than other members of the field artillery. He was sent to France in November 1916, but after about a fortnight fell sick with malaria, which he probably contracted while in New Guinea. He did not take long to recover and joined his battery in the field early in the new year. In early May 1917, the 3rd Light Trench Mortar Battery was in the front line near the French village of Normay, which had recently been captured by the 50th Battalion. On the 6th, they were subjected to an enemy counterattack, during which they were forced to withdraw after firing all of their available ammunition. For more than 2 months, there were no records kept of the battery's activities, although it is likely they remained in action near the Hindenburg Line. On the 15th of May 1917, Gunner Charles Doodson was wounded by shell fragments that penetrated his face, shoulder and thigh. He was taken to a nearby casualty clearing station and eventually onto a hospital in Boulogne. A nurse in the hospital later reported that he was perfectly conscious but too ill to think. He suffered a great deal but was always bright and very grateful. His worst wound was the one in his thigh, which became gangrenous and septic. The nurse reported that he was perfectly calm and died peacefully at 8:50 p.m. on May the 22nd. He was 31 years old. Charles Doodson was buried at the Boulogne Eastern Cemetery, and a photograph of his grave was sent home to his widow. A year after his death, she put a notice in the newspaper that read, "Little we thought when we parted, Charles, it would be our last goodbye." The next year, on the anniversary of his death, Marion's memorial notice was to Charles and his brother Fred, reading, "United in life, united in death." 1 week later, she joined them, dying on the 28th of May, 1919. Charles Doodson's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died whilst serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Charles Edward Doodson, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial, and we wish you all a very good evening.